Hello, this is Bad Vibes. Today's stories all involve the internet, from catfish to creepy Tinder dates, trigger warning for adult content, and attempted sexual assault. So this happened a few weeks back. As I'm sure most of you know, Facebook now has a dating component to it. I was matched with this guy who seemed pretty chill. He was older than me, 27, and I had just turned 23. But in my mind, 4 years age difference isn't really a big deal. We talked for a day or two and decided that we would meet up for a drink and get a feel for each other in person. When we met face to face, he looked older than just 27. He had quite a bit of gray mixed into his facial hair, but I figured it might just be one of those people whose hair turns gray earlier in life. No big deal. We have a few drinks and chatted for a bit. He again states that he's 27. He was nice, but he wouldn't stop staring at me and was feeding me compliments with every other sentence that came out of his mouth. I was flattered he was saying those things, but naturally it made me uncomfortable. I decided it was time for me to head out shortly after that, since I had to be at work at 4:30 in the morning. He walked me to my car and we started discussing his. It got my attention due to the fact that it was a 1970 Camaro. He then offered to take me for a drive in it at 10 p.m. I declined due to the time and the fact that I had only known him for less than 2 hours, and he wants me to get into a car and go to a random drive at night. That wasn't going to happen. I really enjoy watching documentaries about serial killers, reading creepy encounters, and let's not meet stories. The last thing I was about to do was get into a vehicle with an unfamiliar man who will take me God knows where. I know what kind of danger that can subject a person to. He was very persistent about it, but I wouldn't budge. So I got into my car and left for my drive home, which was about a 45-minute long drive. By the time I got home, I received multiple texts from him, probably at least 15. Most of those texts stating about how he already missed me, wants to build a future with me, how he's never fallen this fast for anyone in his 38 years of life, continuing with further compliments. That's when my stomach dropped. He just stated that he's 38 years old. That's not what I was told at the bar, or what's on his profile. I replied to him, inquiring whether or not it bothered him that he is 15 years older than me. It bothered me for damn sure. He states that it didn't, and that he prefers to date younger women around my age. I didn't respond and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I had multiple texts and 5 missed calls, voicemails from the dude. Not gonna lie, I straight up ghosted him and blocked him from every form of social media I had, as well as his phone number, which is a real asshole thing on my part, but he really creeped me out. He was super charming, but way too pushy, and was giving me some Ted Bundy vibes. So shout out to Facebook for introducing me to the creepiest person I have ever gone on a date with. Hey guys, I need some advice. For about 3 months I've been experiencing hacking from what I assume to be another tenant in my building. It began with hacking my Bluetooth speaker. I would be listening to something while doing some housework, and the next thing I would know is my device would be disconnected and the hacker would start playing some very creepy and inappropriate music via the speaker. The main song that would play is Fucked with an Anchor by Elstorm. A song that I never heard until this. If you choose to listen to the song, you will see why this immediately freaked me out. I would try everything I could to turn it off, but they would put the volume on full blast, playing it over and over again. This happened on 2 separate occasions. After this, I stopped using my Bluetooth speaker to prevent this from happening again, until they hacked into my PlayStation and began playing the same song, again on full volume, and continued to play after I tried to press pause or exit the music app. I then unplugged my PlayStation. I have not used it since. Finally, yesterday, I had asked Google a question via my Google Nest device, and straight after, I heard a ding on the device, signaling someone else was controlling it, which is only possible if I grant access. Also the case with all the other devices they hacked so far. Straight after the ding, the hacker started playing the creepy music again. Different from last time, it was an old song with a very creepy undertone, and the only words I can remember is, "Times are getting hard, boy." I straight away unplugged my device to stop the music, and I have stopped using the device altogether. The reason this had me freaked out more than the last few times is the fact I was on the phone with a friend at the time, talking about some personal things I had going on. Therefore, I believe the hacker is able to hear me. I'm unsure whether this is due to him being a direct neighbor of mine, or whether they hacked my devices to listen to me. I'm completely stumped with what to do now, as I've contacted my landlord, and all he said was that he would send a warning email to all the tenants, but I need to contact my internet provider for further action. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I live in a student accommodation, and to make it cheaper, everyone uses the same Wi-Fi, but I have separate logins. So the reason it's so easy for them to hack into my devices is due to using the same Wi-Fi. I then contacted the internet provider and they said they can't do anything about it. I don't know what to do anymore. I have now had to forfeit the use of 3 separate devices to ensure this stops happening, but they continue to find a way to hack me. I feel incredibly unsafe and uneasy in my apartment, becoming paranoid someone is listening to me or watching me. I feel as if I'm going crazy. So please give me advice. My roommate Emma had been swiping through Tinder for weeks. She was hoping to find someone interesting and genuine to go on a date with. Finally, she matched with a guy named Mark. After a few days of messaging back and forth, they agreed to meet up at a trendy bar downtown. The evening started out well, with Mark greeting her with a smile and compliment. They ordered drinks and started chatting, sharing stories, and laughing together. Emma told me that she felt at ease and enjoyed Mark's company, finding him charming and attractive. But as the night went on, Emma started noticing things that made her uncomfortable. Mark would occasionally touch her arm or shoulder without her permission, and he seemed to be drinking much more than she was. He also started talking about himself more and asking fewer questions about her. Despite these red flags, Emma decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and agreed to go to another bar with him. Once they got there, Mark suggested that they go to a secluded area outside and talk privately. Emma hesitated for a moment, but Mark assured her that she was safe, and she reluctantly agreed. As they sat down, Mark leaned in and tried to kiss her. Emma pulled away, telling him that she wasn't ready for that yet, but Mark persisted. His demeanor suddenly became aggressive and intimidating. She felt trapped and vulnerable. She told me that she realized it was too late, that she had already put herself in a dangerous situation. Luckily, she managed to escape from Mark and quickly left the bar, but the fear and anxiety stayed with her long after the date ended. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had narrowly avoided a dangerous situation and vowed to be more cautious when meeting strangers from dating apps. It's important to remember that meeting someone from a dating app can be risky, and it's crucial to take the necessary precautions to ensure your safety. Always meet in a public place, let someone know where you will be, and trust your instincts if something feels off. Emma is now dating a guy named Brad, and they seem good together, and I'm glad she won't have to go on another date from a dating site. I had been using Tinder for a few months and had gone on a few successful dates, so when I matched with Josh, I thought nothing of it. He seemed charming and funny in his profile, and we hit it off immediately. After a few days of messaging back and forth, he asked me on a date to a local coffee shop. When I arrived, Josh was already there waiting for me, and he looked just like he did in his pictures. We ordered our drinks and started talking. He seemed interested in me and was asking me a lot of questions about my life, which I appreciated. I felt like we had a real connection, and we talked for hours. As the evening wore on, he suggested that we go to a nearby park to walk and continue our conversation. I hesitated at first, but he seemed trustworthy, so I agreed. The park was quiet and peaceful, and we talked and laughed as we strolled along the paths. Suddenly, he stopped walking and turned to face me. He had a strange look in his eyes. As I felt a little pang of fear in my chest, without warning, he lunged at me, grabbing me by my arms and pinning me on the ground. I struggled to break free, but he was too strong. I screamed for help, but there was no one around to hear me. His grip tightened, and I could feel his breath on my face as he leaned in closer. I was terrified and thought I was gonna die, but suddenly he stopped and just let me go. I'm sorry, he said, his voice shaking. I don't know what came over me. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing. I didn't know what to do or say. I just wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. I ran to my car and drove home, shaking and crying the entire way. I reported the incident to the police, and they arrested Josh a few days later. It turns out that he had a history of violent behavior and had been stalking me for weeks before our date. I was lucky to have escaped with my life, and I'm never using Tinder again. This experience left me traumatized and scared, and I knew I couldn't take any more risks with my safety. I had been using Plenty of Fish for a while, and I'd gone on a few decent dates, but nothing had really clicked yet. So when I got a message from Mike, I was excited. He seemed like the perfect guy, charming, funny, and we had a lot in common. We chatted for a few days and decided to meet up for drinks at a bar near my house. When I arrived, Mike was already there, talking to a few guys at the bar. We got a table off to the side, and we ordered drinks and started talking. He seemed interested in me and was asking me the basic questions you ask on a first date. Felt like we had a real connection, and our similarities were really crazy. As the night went on, Mike became increasingly flirtatious and touchy-feely. I was enjoying his company, but I started to feel a little uncomfortable with how much he was invading my personal space. When he suggested we go back to his place, I thought about it for a few minutes, but he was so charming I eventually agreed. We took an Uber to his apartment, and things quickly escalated. We started making out on the couch, but then he became very forceful and began touching me in ways that I didn't want. I told him to stop, but he wasn't listening. I tried to push him away, but he was too strong. I started to panic and wondering how I was going to get out of the situation. Finally, I managed to break free and ran out of his apartment as fast as I could. I felt violated and shaken and knew I had to call the police and file a report. I called them right away and gave them Mike's information. A few days later, I found out that Mike had a history of sexual assault and had been in prison before. I was horrified and grateful that I had gotten away from him before anything worse could happen. This experience has scared me and traumatized me enough that I'll never use any online dating again. Just because someone seems perfect online, it doesn't mean that they're a safe person. Every once in a while, the thought pops into my mind, and I realize how stupid I was and how much worse things could have been. Ladies, be safe out there. I'd been using social media for years and thought I was pretty savvy when it came to online interaction. So when I started talking to someone on Instagram who seemed like the perfect guy, handsome, successful, and just smooth, I was excited. We chatted for weeks and quickly became close. But as time went on, I started to notice some inconsistencies in his stories. He would tell me all about his job one day and then change his story the next. He also refused to video chat with me or meet in person, citing work obligations and travel. I started to feel like something was off, but I was so invested in our conversations that I ignored the red flags. One day, he finally revealed to me that he had been using someone else's picture and identity to talk to me. He was actually a woman who had been pretending to be a man for months. I was shocked and hurt. I couldn't believe I had been fooled by this person. The woman then revealed that she developed real feelings for me and wanted to continue talking, even though she lied to me about who she was. I felt manipulated. I didn't want anything to do with her and cut off all communication. The story doesn't end there. Over the next few weeks, I started to receive messages from unknown accounts. They were threatening and aggressive, and I didn't know where they were coming from. I eventually discovered that the woman had been using multiple fake accounts to harass me and tried to get me to talk to her again. I was so scared and didn't know what to do. I didn't want to involve the police, but I also didn't know how to make it stop. It took weeks of blocking and reporting the accounts before the messages finally stopped. This experience left me feeling empty and scared. I realized that even though I was careful online, I could still be taken advantage of by someone who had skills in manipulation. After this happened, I deleted my Instagram and have no interest in being online anymore, which is a good thing because I have a full-time job and going to school. So I guess there's that. So a few days back, I went to a mall a bit far from the house, and things were really going good for the day, but then I was at the KFC in there. Someone on Grindr with a blank profile messaged me while waiting for my food. I shrugged it off, and he didn't send me any pictures, just a message saying hi to me, and asked me if he could give me the best blowjob I would ever have. Seeing that I'm in a public place and absolutely do not have the mood to be horny, I didn't reply and proceeded to eat my meal. After eating, I left the mall while bringing the items I bought from there and waited for a ride to go home. It was dark, around 8 p.m., so I had to be vigilant on my surroundings. While looking out on the road, the same guy messaged me and asked me where I was currently. I saw his distance from me was only 70 meters away, 230 feet from where I was standing. This is getting a bit worse, so I closed the app immediately and proceeded to continue ignoring him. Around 5 minutes later, a guy stood beside me, trying to act unsuspicious, even though my gut feeling was telling me something's wrong with him. He looked like he was in his late 30s. I'm 18, by the way. He was a bit bigger than me, both height and weight. I started to have goosebumps while standing next to him, and it only got worse when he tapped my shoulder and asked if he could suck my dick off. I froze, having no idea what to do, while extremely anxious. But then I suddenly punched him in the face when he started to grab my crotch and tried to unbutton my pants. I then pushed him off of me hard enough that he laid on the ground, and I tried to run as far as I could. I then saw him chasing me afterwards. Luckily, a taxi drove nearby and I rushed inside as fast as I could. I knew that he had to be the guy that was spamming me messages on Grindr, because his Grindr profile tells me that he was literally 1 meter away from me. I blocked their profile and logged out of the app. What I realized is I wasn't logged out at the time, therefore my location was exposed, and I have a profile picture on the app with my face, meaning it was easy for me to be identified there. Also, the location of the mall is shitty and there isn't a ton of lights around. It's surrounded by shitty looking houses and roads. Worse, there wasn't much people around where I stood at the time, and it was also very dark, meaning I wasn't able to identify the man correctly to report him to the local authorities. I joined a Facebook group where people would post ads for butchering equipment. I had this old meat slicer that was no longer in use. As I was getting ready for work one morning, I got a message. It was around 6:20 a.m., but that didn't seem to bother this very passionate potential buyer. He asked a few questions about the meat slicer and seemed to be frantic, like his life depended on this machine. He requested a video call a few times to make sure the machine was working properly, which I rejected as I was getting ready for work. Then he found another ad I posted, an old typewriter. Apparently, he was also interested in that. He asked me about the price, if it was functional, etc. Standard questions. We had texted for about 20 minutes when he asked if he could call me to seal the deal. I gave him my number, to which he said, "I can't call you. We're not on the same network. Can I call you on Facebook Messenger instead?" So he did. I picked up and asked if he could hear me. No response. I looked at the screen and, well, let's just say I found it impressive that someone managed to participate in a semi-normal conversation and buying butchering equipment and a typewriter at 6:40 a.m. while jerking off.